Hello, thanks for joining me today. I'm Julie Allen Wiseman, an associate pastor at Eagle Ridge Church of God in Midland and in Beaverton. I'd like to share with you briefly how our community can become involved with helping people who are victims of human trafficking. I was a single mom for many years when my children were young. I worked at a local university in the finance office. And when doors opened for me to do other jobs at the university, I added those skills to my toolkit. All those years of working to provide for my family taught me how hard it is for single parents to work, financially provide for their family, and emotionally provide for what their children need. I was fortunate, though, that I had a good education and support of family and friends. But not everyone has those benefits. Later, I learned how communities now can come together and help those who do not have these kinds of benefits. And that led me to become involved in the Midland County Human Trafficking Task Force. I then set off to learn as much as I could about human trafficking in the state of Michigan. I attended training from the state task force director, Jane White. My eyes were opened to the severity of the issues that are facing all of us as it relates to human trafficking. We first learned what human trafficking is. Some of you may have already heard these statements before, but it doesn't minimize the severity of what they are. This slide tells you that sex trafficking is a commercial sex act induced by force, fraud, or coercion, or in which a person is performing the act is under the age of 18. Labor trafficking uses force, fraud, or coercion to recruit, harbor, transport, obtain, or employ a person for labor or services in domestic servitude as a farm worker or maybe a factory worker. So these three words are key to this: force, fraud, coercion. Well, these are words I don't use every day. I borrowed some graphics from our former Attorney General's website. Force, Webster says, force is physical power or strength possessed by a living being. He used all his force to open a window. It is the strength or power exerted on an object, physical force. The law states that it is unlawful violence threatened or committed against persons or property, or in other words, persuasive power, power to convince. The second word is fraud. It is defined as deceit or trickery, a sharp practice, a breach of confidence, perpetuated for profit or to gain some unfair or dishonest advantage. An example of this is passing bad money or trying to deceive people for money. The third is coercion. It is further defined as using force or the power to use force in gaining compliance, like the puppeteer controlling the puppet. Those are powerful words, aren't they? As Jane explained in our training, though, the key to all of this is just one simple word, and that word is promise. Kevin Bales, who wrote the book The Slave Next Door, is a story about a young girl trafficked here in Michigan. He described it this way: it is the perfect storm of how poverty, chaos, destructive relationships, and the potential of opportunity will exist for those who desperately have listened to and have been promised a better life through a job, through a relationship, based on care, and it is within their reach, but they discover it's robbing them of their humanity, their soul, and their control with no way out. The elements of human trafficking, I learned, were the process of luring with that promise of something better, and then doing it with force, fraud, or coercion, and then the end game, the involuntary servitude, debt bondage, slavery, or commercial sex acts. Many times, Jane White has addressed some of these misconceptions, though, about what is and is not human trafficking. As you can see, this list of indicators is really long, but I'd like to focus on 3. False promises, the fear of physical retaliation, and not being in control of your own money or your own ID documents. These are some of the needs that victims have. And look at this list and I'm thinking, oh my, I can't help with all of that. I'm overwhelmed. But I can help with some of that. And if we bring people together in collaboration, we can all help victims find a better life. I was excited to serve on the Michigan Human Trafficking Task Force. Its membership is made up of federal, state, local, and sheriff's law enforcement agency, community groups, faith-based groups, the Department of Health and Human Services, the Department of Homeland Security, the FBI, prosecuting attorneys, the Salvation Army, domestic violence shelters, and people who are just friends and want to help those in need. So you would say, well, what can I do about this? Well, first of all, you can become educated on the companies that do operate fairly, or the companies that don't operate fairly. You can go to the government website of child labor force and human trafficking around the world. There are 1,100 pages in alphabetical order of countries where child labor is active. Or you can shop where fair trade is responsible. There's stores, or you can go to online companies that participate in fair trade. If you haven't done this already, do it now. Please enter the national hotline in your cell phone. It's 1-888-3737-888, or you can call local law enforcement if you suspect human trafficking. There were many times when I was going through this journey that I just wanted to quit and let somebody else do it. Then I'd go to one of our online meetings, or I'd go to a training session with another state office, and I'd realize I can't quit. I have been called to stay here and help someone along their journey. I've learned further that there are many court programs that are put in place to help victims receive the help they need to re-enter society, the housing, the skills, medical and dental care, and job training. One agency that is helping in this effort is the Polaris Project. Now, the Polaris Project is based on the name of that star, the North Star, or the Pole Star, aka Polaris. It's famous for holding nearly still in our sky while the entire northern sky moves around it. Polaris Project works to reshape systems that make sex and labor trafficking possible and profitable in North America. So their purpose is to target those systems and then reshape them so that they are not effective. The North Star, or the Polaris, was based on the beacon that was used for those lost in slavery. They would use that light to walk their ways towards freedom. Today, we are filling that roadmap for that journey and lighting a path ahead. The Polaris Project was begun in 2002, and it's sponsored by the federal government. I went to the website, which is listed at the bottom of this slide, polarisproject.org/child trafficking, to learn a little more about myths and truths in trafficking for children. The first one is that child sex trafficking victims virtually always know their traffickers. That was pretty scary for me. And sex traffickers usually groom or seduce children into commercial sex. Rarely do they kidnap them. So, are you worried about child sex trafficking? Kidnapping is not the norm. Online recruitment and grooming is. Children are far more likely to be trafficked by someone the child already knows and trusts rather than a stranger. Child trafficking happens more like this, via texting or gaming, not like this. But don't neglect cautioning your children about the stranger danger. And this is all very sad, isn't it? Well, there are some places that do offer help for children. There are 5 points of access for help for children. First, friends and family. You can be that person. You can be the friend or the family member that can be that friend to that child and help them if they're having any kind of problems. Sometimes they come in contact with law enforcement or criminal justice, and there are systems there to help them. Sometimes health services comes into play. A child is ill and they go to emergency for help, and then those people can help them find help. There are also mobile apps and social media that are really good for them to help find help. And then the child welfare system sometimes has to come forward and offers support for children at that time. We've also noted that in 2019, the number of identified trafficking situations that originated from texting grew from 33% from the previous year. So keep an eye on texting and cell phone usage. We strongly encourage everyone to learn what human trafficking really looks like in most situations and how they can help prevent trafficking here in our community. The more you know, the more you can help us protect children before they get trafficked and help those who are truly vulnerable. The Polaris Project website has a lot of information about many topics that relate to human trafficking. One article is about how the pandemic has affected those caught in human trafficking. In this article, the author points out that housing insecurity is a leading indicator of vulnerability in trafficking. It also states that young people who are aging out of the welfare system and the foster care system are at a high risk. There's additional news that there has been 20% increase in victims and survivors who contacted the hotline themselves. When a victim contacts the hotline, it directly means that there's a better chance of putting them together with a safety plan and an intervention that will work for them. Even this week, we've heard good news. The FBI was able to work in Los Angeles, and it was reported by the USA Today that the FBI used Operation Lost Angels. It began on January 11th, beginning with Human Trafficking Awareness Month. And they put together a task force of 24 agencies that work to identify and find missing children. The officials arrested one person who was on human trafficking charges, and they opened multiple investigations of finding ways to help these children get back to where they needed to be and to get them the help they needed. Another thing that is really important is the Traffic Victims Protection Act. It was enacted in 2000 and has been updated various times, but also most recently was updated in 2019 with strong bipartisan support. And it is also offering prevention, prosecution, and protection for trafficking victims. One thing we can do is we can pledge to learn more about human trafficking, recruitment online, platforms such as Instagram or Snapchat or Kik. We can make sure that we have healthy relationships by learning the warning signs of controlling, possession, harmful behavior, and ending a relationship when those signs are present. We need to be cautious about what information we share on social media and learn who you're communicating with. We also need to spread awareness by sharing information on human trafficking recruitment through safe platforms and with your family and friends. I was reminded as I went to a conference, when we could go to conferences a couple of months ago, it's not a 42-minute TV show with a quick fix and a happy ending. It's not the movie Pretty Woman. It's more like Humpty Dumpty. And it takes a long time to put all these pieces back together again. But you can help in spreading the word about human trafficking. You can raise your voice and speak for those who have no voice. You can get on the mailing list of Congresspeople and ask to be notified when human trafficking issues are being proposed. Learn more about how to strengthen state laws where these individual issues happen. Like us on Facebook, Midland County Human Trafficking Task Force. January is National Stalking Awareness, Human Trafficking, and Modern Slavery Prevention Month. Remember that, please. And there's this famous quote by Edmund Burke: "The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing." I plan to do something. Will you join me? My name is Julie Allen Wiseman. Thank you for watching.